On a heavy, intense workout day, do not go into the cold water. The cold water will cause vasoconstriction, will prevent the blood flow getting into the musculature and therefore lead to the enhanced recovery that you require.
Anything else with the cold plunge?
Yeah, I think the most important piece is
If your life had a nutrition of fitness motto, what would it be?
get up, get out, get moving.
Can you talk to us about how people need to understand that they have the power in them to push beyond the physiological limits?
The limit is set by our mind. If you go out for a run and you set in your mind that you're going to run a 5K distance or a 10K distance or a 21K distance or beyond, it's those last 3-4 kilometers that are really painful.
You know, those rare conversations that don't just teach you something, they transform the way you think. That's exactly what this chat with Dr. Marcus did for me. He's lived in the Arctic, worked with NASA, and even climbed Mount Everest. But what really struck me wasn't the adventure, it was how deeply he understands the science of being human. This episode dives into the stuff we all want to master. How to boost your metabolic health naturally, how to use biohacking and breathwork to build real energy, and what anti-aging truly means when you strip away all the noise. Because the truth is, the human edge isn't found on Everest. It's built every single day through your habits, your mindset, and your choices. And if you've ever wondered how to live stronger, longer, and with more energy, then this conversation is for you. Dr. Marcus, it's really great to have you here today. Thank you for coming all the way from your hectic and busy schedule. How was your flight?
Very good. I'm well rested. I got in last night, so I'm well rested for this conversation. Thanks for having me.
You know, today we're going to talk about the rest, the longevity, the biohacking.
Yeah.
These are terms that people throw very loosely. And you're a world-renowned authority on this. So it's amazing. Your book, I got it and I was reading about it. And there are a lot of snippets in that book, but you went to London to study medicine, right? And you talked about in your book about space, you talked about Siberia, you talked about cold plunges, you talked about Mount Everest and the pressure equation in the lungs and all. Medicine, doctor, cure people, write medicines. What was the shift? When was the shift? What was your story?
I think that's a polite way of saying I'm a misfit. With great humility, I always think of myself as a student of biology. I've always been deeply passionate about the human body. And prior to medicine, my first sort of focus area was extreme physiology. So I did a Bachelor of Science degree at University College London. During my medical years, I spent 4 years in the Royal Forces, in the Royal Air Force. And that exposure really allowed me to dive into subjects which I was always deeply curious about, which is if you take the human body and you place it on the top of Everest, or you place it on the surface of the moon, or you place it in the depths of the Arctic, etc. What happens to that body? How is it that we frail beings that we associate sick care with are able to do these incredible things? And that was the journey that led me to where I am today. So the paradox, which I often now think about, because life is best appreciated when you look at it in retrospect, is that straight out of med school, first rotation was intensive care. Then I did geriatric medicine. Then I did urology and general surgery. And there I'm just confronted with frailty, sick care, people at the end of their life. And it was in complete opposition with how I started my journey, which is working with astronauts, working with fighter pilots, working with Everest summiteers, working with marathon runners. And that paradox in my brain didn't fit. There was something which is like, okay, there's a loose connection here. How do I resolve that? How do I resolve that for myself? Because I want to live that sort of life. And then how do I bring this science and translate it for as many people as possible?
In fact, in your book, you mentioned you took a break in medical college to go and study exercise physiology. Is that true?
That's right. Yeah.
So the thinking was what at that point?
So the benefits of studying at UCL and one of the oldest medical schools in the world is that they allow students to take this opportunity to dive into a subject that they're really passionate about and get the degree through that.
We don't have that in India, right?
I'm not that well versed with the
Yeah.
Indian sort of education system, but it's not just India, the other parts of the world as well. And the reason why I think it's a good addition, apart from the pursuit of a passion, is it also exposes you to, like you've done, the scientific rigor of clinical research science, which is very different to translational or applied medicine. The opportunity to build a skill set when you look at a paper and ask yourself, not just the headline and the abstract, which is where media sort of takes everything today, but is this a good study? Was the hypothesis actually measured through the methodology that was being implied? Was the statistical analysis the right type for the analytics and the demographic of that cohort? These are skills which I think we all need to have, and that opportunity of going away, spending that time deeply entrenched in research science has sort of allowed me now to be more curious and inquisitive whenever the media or a paper sort of gets highlighted in the press.
For me, as a sports nutritionist, exercise physiology is the key to winning an Olympic medal.
Sure.
Right? Recently, we completed Kenneth Benedick's 200-meter Olympics. I was rooting for a gold, missed it by a whisker, we got the silver. Now, you've written the book At the Human Edge.
Yeah.
You practice with people in longevity. You practice people and help people in terms of this word called biohacking.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, what are the real physiological limits of the human body? Because in your book, there was one part where you wrote about pain tolerance and pain threshold. In fact, your book inspired me to do 20 extra repetitions yesterday.
Fantastic.
So can you talk to us about
Yeah.
how people need to understand
Yeah.
that they have the power in them
Yeah.
to push beyond the physiological limits,
Yeah.
and give us some examples?
I think the abstract is that the limit is set by our mind. We are seeing successive records being broken year after year, Olympic after Olympic, and that's teaching us that actually what we perceived to be the limits was merely the perception of what our frame of what the human body is capable of. How far we can push that, I'm not sure. So like you, I spend a lot of time in the high performance world, working with Olympians and high performance cricketers, etc. And something which is very new on the scene is the enhanced games, which has recently been floated, backed by a bunch of international investors, with the idea that unlike the traditional games, which we all frown upon, doping or biological augmentation beyond what is natural, this version of the games will be allowed irrespective of what you want to apply to the athlete. And I think that's going to be very interesting. Obviously, there are dangers that we need to all be cognizant of, but how much can we truly push the limits of physical and mental performance? So I think this new era and new world is about to change now as we augment the body beyond the natural therapies. When I started writing the book, each of my experiences was always focused on the physical. The expedition to Everest, the marathon running, the trips to the Arctic, the research we did in sort of high temperature Saharas, etc. But going through that process, interviewing people, meeting with athletes, going through the science, I suddenly realized that actually the limit was only defined by what we thought it was. And that's why at the end of the book, I included a chapter on mind over matter, because I realized that all of those limits were at some point being broken by the ultimate goal, or maybe the support of having folks like you behind the scenes pushing people to achieve their maximum. And so that for me it's changed how I view my fairly normal life compared to what these athletes are doing. In the same way as you shared your story, day to day, I think all of us can really think about what is our limit, why is that our limit, and how do we break it. And one of the most powerful pieces written was the central governor theory, which was by Professor Tim Noakes out of South Africa, where he described the element.
He's a runner, right?
He's a runner. He's a medical doctor. He's a marathon runner. He's done many comrade runs, worked with some incredible athletes. I think in the world of nutrition, went through that phase where he supported the carb-based approach, and now he's sort of through the science realized that it's actually fat, and which is more beneficial. And there's a ton of stuff written up about that process. But what he introduced to the sports community was this idea that the brain is acting as a protector of the body and limiting the threshold by which we start to slow down to protect ourselves. And I think for all of our viewers, a simple analogy would be, if you go out for a run and you set in your mind that you're going to run a 5K distance or a 10K distance or a 21K distance or beyond, it's often the last 10 to 15%, which is the hardest, irrespective of the distance that you're running, right? When I'm running a full marathon, I don't worry about the first 36, 37 kilometers. I'm chatting, having fun, speaking to friends along the way. It's those last 3-4 kilometers that are really painful. And if I'm doing a 5K run, it's the last 1 kilometer or 500, 600 meters, which suddenly feel like a heavy workload. So there is a brain mechanism, and he coined this idea called the central governor theory, which is that the brain is protecting the body from stretching itself too much and therefore potentially going into pain. But as you improve or increase your thresholds and your resiliency, then you can train the brain to go further and further and further, because the physical capacity is very much there. It's just the brain allowing the body to unlock that part and push your body to achieve.
Speaking of pushing the body to achieve, now this gentleman is a doctor, but he has the God-given right to brag on pushing the pain threshold because he has a Guinness World Record in running a marathon backwards.
Correct. It's not the distance marathon. I do have a Guinness record for running backwards.
All right.
Yes.
So I mean, even to go for a Guinness record and run backwards, you need to train for it. You need to push.
Right.
What's my question here is, first I'm setting the context.
Right.
You pushed yourself.
Right.
You're a medical doctor.
Yeah.
You've understood biohacking, longevity, all of these things at close quarters, right from the Atlantis shuttle program to the funny one was you getting dumped in Serbia and doing that research,
right.
and then getting to the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
All of this, I was reading your book and I was just like, this guy is an adventurer. But to the common person, when we try and tell them do a diet plan and stay true for at least 6 months, 180 days, or start exercising, it will take you again 90, 180, 270 days for the body to start showing results.
Sure.
Can you explain to people out there that you need to give your body time also?
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to people? Because everyone wants the fastest diet plan, the quickest six-pack ab routine, and the shortest way to sleep and still live to 100.
Yeah.
So what's your advice?
The best way to reach anywhere worth going is to go slowly. I think that's a famous phrase which I keep reminding myself of. Marginal gain philosophy, which is the idea that you do 1%, but you do it with a consistency of every day, leads to a 40x output at the end of the year. So I have just trained myself, and when I work with folks, I encourage them to take the ideology, which is just fall in love with the process. The outcomes and the results will show itself. But if every day you can enjoy turning up to the gym, doing that 5, 6, 7, whatever pull-ups, push-ups you want to do, but just get sticky with the process, over time it comes.
Get sticky with the process.
Yes, exactly.
What do you mean by get sticky with the process?
So, it's an idea that you just gotta turn up. You just gotta keep doing it. And it might seem laborious and painful and yes, very disheartening, because for the first few months you won't notice any real change. But if you're just sticky with making sure you turn up every single day, the results will come later on. So when I introduced the idea of biohacking in my clinic and with the folks that we work with, it was not to give you the maximum outcome in the shortest period of time. Many people look at biohacking as a shortcut. I think about biohacking as the small atomic units to achieve a particular goal. So if I want to, let's say, improve your insulin sensitivity, and we're measuring, as you would be, fasting insulin, A1Cs, etc., then the small act of regulating the temperature in your bedroom to 18 degrees Celsius so that I can improve the deep sleep in an individual, so that their metabolic demand changes and it makes their cells more sensitive to the action of insulin, right? They may not connect those two dots. They may say, Doc, why are you telling me to put the air condition down when I want to ultimately reduce my A1C? But you take these small little atomic units around a person and suddenly they just sort of come together and controlling the temperature. Now, of course, a spouse may say, I don't
I
want
was
that.
about to say that because I was going to tell Devika, you make me keep the AC at 23 degrees Celsius. I need it at 18 degrees Celsius because Dr. Marcus said so.
Right. And Devika being wife.
Wife, yes.
Yes, exactly. So I don't have a biohack for that. In terms of spouse disagreements.
Different bedroom.
Luckily, Raina and I, we like the cold, so we're happy to have a cold bedroom. But this is just one example of using the biohacking philosophy, and again reminding folks that, because you're absolutely right, we're living in a culture where we celebrate
Quickness, shortcuts.
Exactly. Our dopamine network is just so used to that immediate result.
Do you get patients that we also just want, like, Dr. Marcus, I need to get this in 2 months flat?
I interview them as much as they ask me. So one of the first questions I ask people is, how intrinsically motivated and disciplined are you? The second thing I remind them of is the fact that I'm your compass, your coach, your catalyst, but you have to do the hard work. And like other folks, we talk about the 4 Ps, the big first P being participatory, right? You have to actually do the work that I'm asking you. Then we can prevent and be proactive and be personalized and be sort of data-centric, etc. But proactivity is participatory is the key. So we have the luxury of self-selection or selection bias to that degree. But even in folks who, because we all are intrinsically lazy, right? Human behavior is intrinsically lazy. We will always choose the path of the lowest resistance. I think if we can therefore apply a holistic approach to a person where we're just making these small biohack changes around themselves, then we can show them success, help them celebrate the success, and then ultimately success begets further success.
In your book, you've talked about human potential and adaptation. So the 18 degrees Celsius is an example of how you could change temperature to help the body physiologically adapt.
Yeah.
Now, do you believe that the body can truly upgrade through lifestyle changes? Or people come to my clinic and say, you know what, genetically I'm fat, or genetically I've got diabetes. It's bound me, I can't do anything.
No, great question. In fact, this was the topic I was talking about yesterday at one of the summits, and the idea that they poised, which is, what is the contribution of genes to our longevity? Nature versus nurture, which is often spoken about. It is not 50-50. It is around 15 to 20% contribution by genes, primarily what are called longevity lags, longevity associated genes, which protect the organism. There are very few genes which make you more prone to particular disease. We can think of cancers like breast cancer with BRCA1. We can think of Alzheimer's disease with ApoE4. But there are otherwise very few genes, or Huntington's disease, which is a specific Huntington gene. Otherwise, the diseases we see today are polymodal, i.e. they involve many different genes coming together, and they are epigenetically driven. Epigenetically driven by meaning that your choices, your location, and the people that you're surrounded with are changing the upregulation or the downregulation of certain genes, and therefore making you more at risk or less risk of diseases. So anyone coming to me, and I hear this a lot, I'm sure you do, Doc, it's my genes, my parents have diabetes, therefore I have diabetes. That is not the reality. The reality is you can take control of your trajectory by making the changes in your life and pushing out disease further down the line.
I want to interrupt. How early?
Earlier the better. The earlier the better, irrespective of however old you are. One of the most inspiring studies I've seen recently, which I think was published last year, came out of Australia, where they took a group of women in their 70s and they introduced them to daily 5 to 10 minutes of resistance training, as simple as getting out of the chair, lifting up dumbbells, etc. And even in that age cohort, even in women who are so far postmenopausal that their estrogen is probably in their boots, they were still able to see muscle mass gains and health span improvement as well. So there is no such thing as starting too late, but we can all start as early as possible. And these changes just compound like our financial instruments, health instruments compound with time.
If you were to be in a leadership position for 1.4 billion Indians,
Yeah.
from a healthcare perspective,
Yeah.
when I ask this question, how early,
Yeah.
do you feel the requirement of, what's the word, physical training in school, PT, or exercise in school or sports should be amplified more?
Absolutely. And if the government is watching this, happy to take charge of that. We need to make sure that we are reintroducing movement every single day. Starting young, inculcating those good habits as a child will drastically alter the trajectory of the health of that group of individuals, number one. Number two, better city planning. Bangalore used to be known as the Garden City. I used to love coming here 10, 12 years ago and go on all the great runs that I could do. Now it's difficult to even walk from one place to the other. Our footpaths aren't there, etc. So how do we better plan cities to improve mobility and less reliant on just sitting in a taxi or a car all the time? Second, I think the third big piece is, and this is a big problem, is we need to fundamentally change the celebration of convenience culture.
Which is?
Well, the fact that I can order any calorie on my phone sitting right now and have it delivered to this door in less than 10 minutes, when I say we, I mean society is celebrating that. Venture money is going behind those practices, which are ultimately driving hypercalorific states, poor macronutrient consumption, primarily high fructose and sugars. And then, of course, no mobility, because you don't even have to walk to the store to buy it, right? And this is just one example. There's so many other convenience cultures that we keep celebrating. We're going faster and faster and faster. That 30-minute Domino delivery has now become a 10-minute delivery by any of the apps today.
I have a statement. I say, if you blink it, you'll shrink it.
So, and unfortunately not your waistline,
Yeah.
right? So that's the problem. So I think this is another big conversation we need to have, which is, of course, we want to celebrate entrepreneurship. We want to celebrate ease of access. But what is it that we are providing access to? Is it good quality food? Is it the right lifestyle choices, etc.? So any entrepreneurs watching, think about building good businesses which can improve the health of our nation.
Speaking of businesses, the world of longevity,
Yeah.
biohacking, cryotherapy, fasting, supplements, fad diets are also getting sneaking into that.
Yeah.
And now AI-driven health predictions.
Hmm.
You're a scientist, you're a doctor. What does science actually say? If someone's listening and they want to live not longer but better, what are the absolutely non-negotiable first steps?
Exercise every day. Has to be done. Exercise, if it was a pill, would be the most powerful longevity pill any of us can ever imagine.
Somebody sitting on a couch and watching this podcast who's in their mid-30s or mid-40s, never have had the time to exercise. As Dr. Marcus,
Yeah.
a medical doctor,
Yeah.
a biohacking expert, a
Yeah.
longevity doctor, how could they start?
So maybe exercise is a scary word for them, but move every day should not be scary. Right?
Okay.
The simple act of doing chores at home can burn calories, can get you up and about moving, and can be a very effective way of mobilizing the body.
Is this why our ancestors were a little slimmer, like my grandfather or grandmother slimmer, because they walked more, they ground the masala?
Yeah.
Like I remember my grandmother for 45 minutes grinding
Absolutely.
masala on a stone.
Great question. So blue zones, which is this conceptual idea of epidemiological studies looking at centenarians, people living above 100, led by the work of Dan Boitner. It's now a Netflix docu-series called Live to 100. He studied 6 cultures around the world where they lived to be greater than 100 years old. And these were small pockets. And he's looked at some of the anthropological and societal correlations between that. What's interesting is that across all 6 of these, exercise isn't there, but they move every day. The hilly terrains, the fact that they have to farm the land, or as you're saying, they have to manually mill the grain, or whatever that might be, or fish, go out and fish. We have lost the day-to-day movement in our lives.
Which is why we have to go to the gym and exercise.
Which is why we have to go to the gym and exercise.
Or do Pilates or yoga,
exactly,
whatever it is.
Exactly. And people, if they do that, they think, okay, that's the beginning and end of my movement for the day. And then they spend 8, 9, 10, 11 hours completely sedentary at their desk.
In fact,
undoing all that good work.
In fact, last week I was talking to a lawyer, a female lawyer, and she says, I need to lose 10 kgs. Right? And I was like, okay, I need you to at least start walking. As a lawyer.
Right.
She says, I don't have the time.
Right.
I was like, I can bring your diet down only that low.
Right.
Beyond which it's going to actually make you gain more weight.
Right.
I said, I need you to walk, starting the first month, 6,000 steps a day. She's like, I can't do it. So, do you feel that when you consult with clients, psychologically when we ask them to exercise, they are in defense mode, denial mode, or in, what's the word, confrontation mode with the medical expert?
Yeah, so language is a very important piece of this entire equation. So I don't actually use the word exercise. So typically the 5 pillars that I start as the foundation, which I think for all of us is the foundation of whether you want to live high performance or live longevity, is sleep, move, not exercise, move, fuel. So again, the language of fueling the body, not dieting, your body's a machine, fuel it well. Breathe, which is where we talk about stress and the components of good stress and mitigation of bad stress and inflammation. And then connect, the importance of human connections, which again is breaking so quickly in modern day world. So the type of word you use, I've found, can inspire and engage a person so that it breaks down that potentially confrontational, or more likely just the resistance in their brain, because their brain has always told them, I don't exercise, I don't like exercise.
I'm seeing more and more doctors not only exercising, but prescribing exercise on their prescription pad. I had a client come to my clinic and he's like, doctor told me to walk 45 minutes a day. So his list of medicines were there, and it's actually written, meet the dietitian, walk 45 minutes, Monday to Sunday.
Very cool.
So I was like, this is so cool that, the medical community is telling people, you got to move. Speaking of moving, right? I'm a huge believer of data, as is you. I've read it in your book. I can just see you sitting in the what's that, John F. Kennedy Space Center, and getting in all of the data, and then wow, this is so exciting and all. It's a pity you didn't have phones at that time. We would record everything, right? We're the older generation. This younger generation has everything documented. But my question on data is this: that we now have wearables. From the CGM devices to the rings to the exercise wearables to the sweat patches, all of these things are going to be giving us data. Some of it can be input into AI and it gives algorithms and it predicts some amazing data. But data without action is noise. Now, how can you as a doctor explain to people that by knowing these numbers, they can go beyond just the data noise and do meaningful changes?
So my philosophy of this is actually pretty simple. I can't treat what I can't measure. So if you're coming in front and sitting in front of me and you have a goal of A, B, or C, in order to get there, I need to be able to quantify where that is today, prescribe and intervene, and then most importantly, see whether that intervention or that prescription is working in you, because we may respond very differently to the same set of recommendations. So the only way of closing that loop for me as the practitioner is to collect the information. But just because I need the data does not mean that you need to be confronted with the data, because I see a lot of, I'm sure you do too, people with a high degree of anxiety when the data is presented to them.
Correct.
Or it actually switches them into a reverse mode completely. So data is not the celebration. I really like the phrase you said, which is data without action is noise. So we don't celebrate the data. If you're a quantified individual who loves to know your information.
A lot of the techies in Bangalore.
Exactly. I'll spend hours with you on those realms of data. But most people are not like that. So for them, it's just the action that's really required. And even in the simple tools that we use, which is an mobile app in our clinic, the home screen is your biohacking circadian clock for the day. You wake up at this time, you go to bed at this time, and these are the 3 or 4, 5, 6 things that we need you to do, which are sort of validated by the clinical team, and the health coaches can monitor that. If you're interested in the data, you can go screen 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if you want to, but it's buried beneath the surface. For us right now, it's the action. What do you need to do today? Keep it simple.
If you had to choose one instrument as a doctor to change the health of a person, for measuring them, only one instrument.
Wow.
You're stuck in Siberia right now.
Right.
And what would it be? I would choose the modern weighing scales which have visceral fat and.
I was going to choose exactly the same thing.
Oh, you would also choose the same?
Yeah, because I think body composition is such a critical metric. Now, it might not be relevant to if you're saying in Siberia versus.
It wakes up a person.
Huh?
It wakes up a person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it also goes beyond that horrible metric of just weight or BMI, right? We can fundamentally look at muscle being metabolically active, etc. So I think the smart scales are a powerful tool.
And do you have a smart scale?
I do. I have 4 at home.
one for each member of the family.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
But you got to tell me why you have 4 at home.
Because I think, like you, I'm constantly experimenting,
checking which one is more accurate.
Checking all of them. I have about 6 of these sleep rings. I have multiple sort of fitness bands and a whole stack of glucose monitoring patches and microbiome kits. I mean, they're constantly coming and going because I like to self-experiment. I never prescribe anything that I haven't used myself, including pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, supplements, all of that stuff. So, yeah, my wife is very annoyed by it.
She'll soon ask you to have a new biohacking house. But speaking of biohacking house, both you and I have been in this quite some time.
Yeah.
And we see fads come in.
Yeah.
Right? There was the ketogenic phase that we saw. We saw the paleo phase, right? And people go through all of these things and people come up with various things. And somehow the VC community, which is the venture capital community, the investors and all are talking about biohacking, because this is a place where you can suddenly make it very cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when I look at stuff, I start giggling. I start smirking, and then sometimes I'm like, whoa, this is like really cool. Like, I like in your book, you've written about climbing into the higher altitudes and how the what's it pressure called between the alveoli and the
partial pressure.
Partial pressure.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't become a doctor. I was not that good. Okay, so I did clinical biochemistry.
Right.
So partial pressure.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about, sorry, I'm deviating over here, ventilation.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is, whenever people talk about biohacking, the starting point is breath.
Yeah.
For everything in exercise physiology, fat loss, weight loss, longevity. Few tips to help people to figure out this breath thing, because I think people are breathing wrong.
Yeah. I'm becoming deeply curious by it. In fact, just 3 days ago, I was in Egypt last month.
Okay.
And there was a very globally renowned breathwork expert who was also at the same event. And then we got chatting, and he was in Bombay a few days ago, so we caught up. And he was presenting his journey and also data. And interestingly, he was comparing and contrasting the neuropsychological benefits of plant-based medicine like ayahuasca, like functional mushrooms, stuff which we consider to be on the fringe, but ancestrally has been in our practice culturally across the world for so many thousands of years. And the changes that are happening at the neurotransmitter and the sort of the brain neural synaptic level to breathwork. And the replication of those mechanisms through the action of breath. Scientifically approach breath frequencies and modalities to give you those benefits. So I'm genuinely deeply curious by this, because I think, as you rightly said, we're just breathing wrong, right? We celebrate a life which is busy, and in that busyness, we're probably having a respiratory rate much higher than we should be. And actually, life is lived in between successive beats and breaths. And how do we bring that stillness back into our lives? So I'm going to be on a quest myself for many months. I'm sure he's giving me a laundry list of books to read and scientific publications and videos to watch. So that's definitely going to be something that I'm going to be experimenting on myself. But I think simple things, like I always do this thing before I get on stage, and I loved how you had a moment of sort of gratitude and reflection before we started. I do a very simple breathing exercise, a box breathing exercise every time before I go on stage, just to center the brain, slow down the body, take control of my heartbeat, reduce my blood pressure, etc. Same thing at night when I find myself tossing and turning in a new bedroom because I travel a lot, rather than sort of reaching out to the television or sort of waking the brain up again, just doing a very calming breathwork activity to just calm the brain back down. So I think there are so many examples. My kids actually in their school, even at this young age, they are being taught different breathing techniques to help them through their day, because it'll help them learn better, it'll help them become more still, it can reduce the much higher stresses and strains that children have today versus when we were growing up. So I think the earlier we can start and the more we can encourage these conversations, the better. So I'm so happy you brought it up. Yeah.
So one is the breath.
Yeah.
And in your book now you talk about fuel.
Yeah.
I like the way you use fuel, and that's why I introduced you as the Formula One mechanic. You decide how much fuel goes into the person's body and what rate exercise physiology happens. You talk about optimizing energy levels instead of just chasing a lifespan goal.
Yeah.
Now, what does energy optimization really mean in your research? And the second question is, what is the most massive or the biggest energy drains that you see in modern lifestyle?
Energy is a very important principle, because energy is ultimately our currency.
Okay.
We can think about it at the macro level as us as human beings. How much energy do I have today to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc.? I like to look at it at the cellular level, and that's where mitochondria comes in, and why I had an entire chapter on sort of mitochondrial bioenergetics in the book, because the mitochondria, and everyone watching it probably remembers their high school teacher telling them, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Guys, it does a lot more than that. It's just one of the things it does. But it has a central role to play in high performance. I was introduced, or reintroduced rather, to the mitochondria during the Everest expedition, because as we were studying the hypoxic changes that the body undergoes, hypoxia means a low oxygen pressure. As you go higher, there's less atmosphere, less driving force of gas, therefore the concentration of oxygen in your body is lower. So your body is having to now undergo cellular adaptations to counteract and deal with that low oxygen environment. So the mitochondria at the last step have to remodel itself to get used to driving with very little fuel, right? Producing energy with very little oxygen. So mitochondria are really interesting as an organelle to study, because they are implicated not just in the high performance world, but now also in the longevity world. When we look at the hallmarks of aging, there were 12, there are now 17. Mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the key markers which are showing us that the body is then entering a stage of frailty. And it kind of makes sense. If you're a mitochondria sitting in the beta cell of the pancreas, and the goal is to excrete insulin into the bloodstream, if the mitochondria are not energetic enough, the cell can't do its work. And therefore, we start the beginnings of the consequences which eventually may lead to diabetes. And the same example can be done for cardiac myocyte or a neural brain in the brain, etc. So how do we optimize for energy at the mitochondrial level, which can hopefully translate into the organism level to have more energy day to day? And there are different mechanisms to do so. Oxygen is one of them. So the simple act of breathing can potentially raise, obviously it'll raise ventilation in the body and oxygenation. Nowadays we have hyperbaric oxygen therapies, the chambers which exist, and we're certainly using it in our athletes and longevity individuals to look at very specific protocols where they're sitting in a pressurized chamber, breathing high oxygen, then taking it off, then breathing high oxygen, then taking it off, to look at how that can elevate cognitive function, improve metabolic demand, enhance endurance capacity, a whole bunch of different things. So oxygen is a powerful way of doing so. The second is fuel. And actually, it's the absence of fuel, ironically, which leads to the biggest gains at the mitochondrial level, fasting.
Mitochondrial biosynthesis.
Yeah, exactly. So you starve the mitochondria for a period of time. And guys, the body loves stress, by the way, right? It's this good stress applied to the body, whether it's temperature, whether it's fasting, whether it's oxygen, whether it's, any...
Fasting is a key one, right?
Is a key one, right? So even now, and I routinely go through these phases where I calorie restrict my body for periods of time in the hope that the mitochondria then has the opportunity to undergo autophagy or mitophagy, which is where the old decrepit mitochondria are broken down and the new ones.
I call it Diwali spring cleaning.
Exactly, exactly.
So the old guys get thrown out.
And it's the same analogy as your kitchen, right? You want to clean your kitchen every so often, but if you're constantly busy in your kitchen, there's never time for you to
busy
clean
meaning you're eating food all the time.
Exactly.
And you're not allowing the mitochondria to get a little bit of starvation.
Yes.
So the old guys can be thrown out.
Exactly. So that's another powerful way of sort of re-energizing the mitochondria.
So sorry, I'm going to interrupt you here because I can just see millions of people out there saying, but Dr. Saab, is fasting good for my health?
The short answer is that it can be. It's an important tool in the toolkit. Is it equally effective in everyone? No. You probably see this much more than I. I have a lot of folks who come and see me who are, especially women who are perimenopausal or postmenopausal, and because of changes in monthly cycles in the women, and then of course as they approach the perimenopause, that can change their body's dynamic to fasting, oftentimes putting them in a more inflamed state and therefore more likely to
and most women
retain
do that
water.
Because they're like, oh, I'm gaining weight, so let me not eat.
Yes, exactly.
And they actually don't know that at that point, this sort of fasting is not beneficial.
Which I think connects back to, our shared preference of the smart scale. Because if you can change the narrative in society away from weight, but what's the component of your weight which is actually changing? If it's muscle, fantastic, keep going, don't worry about it. People aesthetically want to bring their fat down, but longevity, we know 22% is actually giving you a longevity advantage. Probably won't give you the front cover of a fancy magazine, but it has a longevity advantage. And then of course water, how much water you retain primarily through inflammation is really important as well. So I can't remember how we got here, but we got
because
here.
We were talking about
everyone should be fasting.
Fasting, and then we were talking about mitochondrial with energy optimization.
Right.
And then how we can see what are the largest drains on people's lifestyle, because mitochondria is the powerhouse, giving you energy. You want to clean up the mitochondria and have more younger mitochondria, more efficient mitochondria. But what are people not doing today from a food is fuel point of view, and what are the biggest drains on this energy?
So great. So I think over consuming sugars and simple carbs are...
Because everyone says too much of sugar not good. But as a doctor, can you tell us how does the sugar literally nuke the mitochondria?
Nuke is a great word. So when sugar hits the system, and primarily let's keep it simple and just talk about simple sugars and high fructose sugars rather than the better versions and starches out there. So when sugar enters into the body and is absorbed and hits the bloodstream, immediately the body recognizes this spike and it needs to do something about it. Why? Because the body is intolerant to having too much sugar in the bloodstream. Right? The easiest way of thinking about this is that if you take a normal person and you take a diabetic individual, you and I assume you're non-diabetic.
Yes.
Yeah. So both of us, if we measured our sugars now, probably have a sugar level about 65 to 80 milligrams per deciliter. You take someone with diabetes and they probably have a sugar about 120 to 130, right? The equivalency of that, remembering that we only have 5 liters of blood in our body, is that a diabetic probably has about an extra tablespoon of sugar in the blood versus you and I. That's a very, very small amount of delta. But that amount of sugar itself, over a period of time, can lead to the consequences, whether it's diabetic retinopathy, kidney disease, cerebrovascular events, cardiovascular events, etc. So this is really important for people to understand, which is that sugar is really dangerous, and the body has an incredibly effective way of titrating the level to a very, very small band. So if it can't stay in the bloodstream, where does the sugar go? So we have insulin as our primary system. So the insulin gets recognized, it gets secreted out by the pancreas. It immediately activates a certain level of cellular pipes in different parts of the body, and the sugar then migrates its way into storage. So it can go into muscle, it can go into the liver, some of it can sort of get converted and go into the brain. So you have these different GLUT transporters which then move sugar out into storage. And if you're doing that too often, 2 problems happen. Number one is your body is constantly being bombarded with insulin, right? Insulin itself is a dangerous peptide. We have been taught through medical school that diabetes is a disease of sugar. Diabetes is a disease of insulin. It's the hyperinsulinemia. Insulin is a growth hormone. It causes hypertension. It causes remodeling of the blood vessels, which leads to hypertension and cardiovascular disease and cerebrovascular disease. Insulin leads to cardiometabolic disease and fatty liver disease, etc. So the body doesn't want to have high levels of insulin. High levels of insulin is a problem. And all the medicos out there, I would encourage you to really think about this statement, because a type 1 diabetic or a type 2 diabetic on insulin therapy today is often said or told, eat what you need to, top up your insulin. That is one of the most disastrous ways of managing that individual over their lifetime, because it's not just the sugar that's going to kill them, it's going to be that hyperinsulinemia over a period of time which is going to kill them. So I'm sure, like you, I measure everyone's fasting insulin levels as a signal to see how problematic it is.
So this is one of the vampires of this mitochondrial drain.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
I think the rest and recovery. Well, yeah, I mean, in the fueling system, all of them would have. So alcohol is another sort of, it's a macro, but there are high sugars in there as well. I think the second big area which people aren't focusing enough effort on is around recovery. Right? Every body needs, and every cell needs the stimulus to stretch, i.e. the stress to push itself. But growth happens in the period of recovery. You need to allow the body to recover thereafter. So whether it's cognitive overload or whether it's just physical busyness in our days, India is one of the most sleep-deprived countries on earth. The average Indian is sleeping about 90 minutes less than he or she should be.
That recent sleep survey that came
Exactly,
out, right?
exactly. So this is another factor, because you can climb a big mountain because you allow the mitochondria to adapt to the low oxygen. But before we go for summit, by the way, guys, we spend time at base camp.
Base camp, you keep going up, come down, keep
exactly,
going up, coming down,
exactly.
right? And resting over there.
Yeah, and same with exercise. For all the Olympians, we plan progressive overload, and then every sort of quarter, you have a period of 3 to 4 weeks where they come back down. You need that. The body needs that opportunity to rest and recover, as does, the mitochondria is just the atomic unit of that. Yeah.
In the longevity space and the mitochondria, we have everyone chasing these gym bodies.
Right.
right? I get trolled a lot because I'm skinny,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I do work out in the gym and all.
Yeah.
But based on what Dr. David Sinclair talks about in longevity,
Yeah.
the MTOR gene and all,
Yeah.
does excess protein also have an ability to make you age faster?
That's actually
Because you have the thing that you need protein, you need no protein because you're growing older. And as a nutritionist, I know I have to give an elderly person 1.2 grams per kg body weight or 1.5 because he or she is lifting.
Yeah.
But if he or she is not lifting, then do I give extra protein? And I know what the answer is and what I do, but you get constantly trolled by celebrity influencers out there. It's like, oh, you know, that protein is being recommended in high doses. So I want another doctor's opinion that what's your take on eating too much of protein?
I'm glad I'm not the only one being trolled. Someone today, and I actually enjoy it because they come up with some really interesting one-liners. Like today, this morning, somebody wrote on a video that I was on saying, oh, you know, don't listen to this doctor because he looks like he'll fall over if he picks up the barbell.
But they don't know that you got a Guinness World Record in running
which is okay.
backwards.
I mean, that's okay. They just look at this little snippet and away they go. The problem is other people shouldn't be influenced by those sort of statements.
My media manager said this to me. So don't worry about the trolls.
Yeah.
They don't have the luxury of consciousness. That was amazing. I thought that was good.
I'm not going to comment because then we might get more trolls thereafter. But
so coming back to the protein.
Back to the question. So mTOR specifically, you brought up mTOR. So everyone watching, what is mTOR? mTOR stands for the mammalian target of rapamycin. mTOR is one of the fundamental pathways associated with aging and the potential aging processes. And it is activated. So like any pathway, it can be upregulated or it can be downregulated, right? So rapamycin, a longevity molecule, is one of those molecules which are suggestive to be beneficial to longevity because it can activate mTOR and therefore, if given in the right dosage over a period of time, can lead to benefits. And we've seen that in worms, in mice, in flies, in dogs, in primates, and the first in-human studies are now going on. So in the same way as you can potentially activate, and what's the right word for it? It's a pathway which is a little nuanced. So it doesn't like to be turned on all the time, neither does it like to be turned off all the time. It's like the Goldilocks. You need to get it just right. So in the same way that something like rapamycin can potentially activate mTOR, it's also very sensitive to protein. And if you have too much protein, it can deactivate itself. So again, there's a nuance there because we know protein is important, especially in the Indian population because we're deficient. We know protein is important because we want muscle. Muscle is critical to longevity. There's no other greater tissue than that. But if you excessively consume it, are you inhibiting the pathway that you want to potentially activate in the first place? So there are much smarter people out there which will give you much more nuanced answers than that. But that's sort of how I see it. I'm not sure of your observer bias versus mine, but I probably have very few people who are excessively consuming. I mean, of course, what do they call them? The gym bros. They're probably eating too much of the wrong type of protein.
Correct.
So they're not eating real food. They're not eating real protein. They're just substituting with all the artificial ones, probably being educated by their trainer who may not have the right sort of scientific rigor or training. But otherwise, the vast majority of people I see are just so protein deficient that we just need to just get them going.
So my observational bias, doctor, just to give you input, and which is what you also do, is the blood test.
Right.
We look at the urea, we look at the creatinine.
Yeah.
The problem for me is I can't keep asking for a blood test every week.
Yeah.
But we also look at the microbiome.
Okay.
And the CGM monitor actually gives us a great input. Okay. Because we actually have patients who take a protein supplement and they get a sugar spike and they're like, how do I get a sugar spike?
Fantastic. Please tell us more about that. That's so important.
So I think over here, it's dosing of protein can also create your insulin release.
Right.
Which causes you to peak your sugar level at that time. So the CGM is able to see this dumping of sugar coming in from the liver is what I understand.
Yeah.
As a nutritionist, what I look at is I try to fly under the radar.
Right.
When the person's not an Olympic level athlete.
Right.
If you're an Olympic level athlete, press the accelerator.
Sure.
Never mind if the wheels fly off.
Yeah.
You're going for a medal.
Yeah.
But everybody else,
Yeah.
there's no need to press the accelerator so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore, the dosing of protein, the type of protein,
Yeah.
the timing of protein
Yeah.
is where I look at it as a very cautious approach.
Yeah.
And the latest research now coming out in the microbiome, irrespective of how, as a nutritionist, I want to give protein, there are bacteria in the gut that may not agree with that dosing of protein.
Right. Okay.
So the ammonia pathways, the methane pathways, the putrescine pathways, all are indicative now in the latest research that is coming out of the microbiome. And so for me, the data, when it comes to me, I'm like, okay, it's telling me it's in the red.
Yeah.
So don't be over prescribing a nutritional supplement. But
Yeah.
let's talk about this younger generation that's trying to work out, trying to get a better lifestyle and everything.
Yeah.
I am getting a lot of youngsters coming in on my app. I've launched a dietary planning app.
Okay.
And the age group is shocking me is 25 to 35. I told my team it's going to be 40 plus.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
It's younger people downloading a diet planning app.
Mm.
And the number one symptom that is being fed in among 15 or 20 symptoms is fatigue.
Energy. Yeah. Yeah.
Burnout generation.
Yeah.
And I think it's because high stress, post-sleep, chronic fatigue is the norm.
Yeah.
And you work with corporate leaders,
Yeah.
high performers.
Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake that they are making in stress management? And what is one thing that you're advising them to reset this stress?
So the word that I hear a lot of is energy. So I don't have the energy that I used to have before. I don't have the energy to play with my kids, etc., etc. And typically the population is slightly older. So I think, our population will be 35 to 55. Average age probably similar, 40, 42, etc. The contributions of those, I think, are probably multifactorial. One is going to be because they are at the more senior levels of leadership. Their lifestyles are very different to the younger generations. They are traveling a lot more for work. Quite often we try to be efficient. I'm as guilty of this as anyone else. You try to take the morning flight out and the evening flight back so you can be home and not spend so many nights away from the family. So the meals that we're being exposed to on the flights, which are just horrible. Secondly is the choices that we have available at airports, which the biggest struggle I have is just trying to find one place that I can eat some sort of fiber, fat, and protein in an airport. It's really difficult. And now my brain knows that if I'm in, Bangalore terminal this, I can go here. If I'm in Hyderabad terminal this, I can go there. So at least those choices are there. Make for a good app, by the way, anyone listening.
Yeah, and maybe a food box delivery service that just at the airport gate you get a healthy box to carry.
Exactly, you can take it on the flight with you, right? That's a great opportunity for some entrepreneurs to build out.
Yeah. We're talking about food.
Yeah.
And you talked about the stress part.
Yeah.
Are there any hacks that you're going to give people from the food department and any other hacks to combat this stress? Like I love the hack you told me about 18 degrees Celsius in the bedroom. Is there anything other else that Dr. Marcus recommends?
Yeah, so let's think about it. So on the macro side, I am actually very careful. So we encourage people to just carry something from home rather than, and again, most people in this age bracket have the luxury of somebody making it for them. So it's just convenient to then carry it with them as opposed to having to eat, from the outside. Protein choices over carb choices wherever possible. Educating people on the quantity of what a healthy snack is, not the typically, unfortunately, commercially available, bars which are marketed as healthy snacks. They're often very high in sugar and calories. But which nuts, how much of, which seeds, how much of. Again, very simple to carry with you, can be quite effective. A simple one like the utilization of apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar applied on top of your salad or maybe consumed in a glass of water to help manage the glucose spikes. That's another effective one. We use a lot of nutraceuticals for individuals. So I'm personally a fan of berberine. In fact, I take berberine as well. Berberine, it has very what's the word, a very effective management like metformin, which we typically give to an insulin resistant diabetic. Berberine has a high degree of efficacy there. Curcumin, haldi, is a great anti-inflammatory nutraceutical to use as well. So yeah, there are lots of these tiny changes that we can help people make. Yeah.
So today we have a lot of buzz around the longevity. VCs are investing big money. I'm seeing dime by dozen so-called longevity centers cropping up. Even Ayurveda is talking about longevity. I think it's a good fashion thing to come out, which will help people exercise more, sleep better, and eat better or eat right. But in all of this, where do you see longevity science going? From a personalized medicine therapies based on our DNA, regenerative therapies, your hyperbaric chambers. Because of you, yesterday I did the cold plunge for the first time.
Fantastic.
I
So you did 20 more push-ups or squats, and now you've done
because
the
I was
cold
meeting
plunge.
you, right?
Fantastic.
So I read your book and it's like,
Yeah.
so I'm behaving like a diva in the gym. and then I realized the pain threshold.
Right.
And then you talked about the cold and physiology, how
Yeah.
it benefits.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But is longevity all of this fashion, as we call it, or fashion, or the simple, timeless habits of eat well, move better, sleep better?
I think, Ryan, it all comes down to how we define the word. You're right. There's a herd mentality happening right now, and lots of influencers are jumping on that bandwagon. Everybody now puts that word longevity expert in front of their name. What is longevity? Longevity at the definition is extending human lifespan, i.e., how can we live longer? Now, globally, we seem to have reached some sort of biological limit. The oldest human, depending upon whether you believe it or not, is somewhere either 124 or 127, right? There's never been something that goes beyond there. And certainly, even people who live into their 110s and beyond, there is something that breaks down and then everything sort of comes to a crash. So longevity science began, if we really rewind the clock back 50, 60, 70 years, it really began in trying to ask the question, is there a fundamental limit to life? Does biological aging occur as a process? And if it's a process, what does that process look like? And if we can understand what that process looks like, can that process be manipulated? Right? So that's sort of the science of longevity. Mix that in now with what's happening globally, which is a massive explosion in lifestyle-related disease, in people falling ill earlier, and therefore a much larger burden of disease at the population level. You have people talking about health span, and I'm one of those individuals. As a practitioner, my fundamental focus is how can I improve the quality of your health first. As a byproduct, you may live longer, not breaching the 120, but maybe taking the average life expectancy in India at 71, 72. If you start early and you live healthy, you hopefully have the blessing to add another 20 years to that, and 20 years of experiences doing all the great things that life can enjoy, not lived in sickness, but lived in a good state of health. So you have health span, you have lifespan, and now, as you mentioned, there is this third wheel which has been thrown in, which is the fashion trends of infusion, cold, oxygen, all of those things, which is wellness / well-being, which has the aesthetic dermatology, skin procedures, etc. So I think what's really important is that we need to firstly ask ourselves, what is the problem we're solving for? Are we solving for health span? Great. That's exactly what I do day in and day out. Are we solving for lifespan? That's what the scientists are doing, trying to figure out the biology of aging and then molecules and techniques to extend it. Or are we solving for wellness? That's a different trend and intervention altogether. So these three worlds are combining right now, and I think it's just the nature of the world we live in, which is sort of social media driven and people trying to jump on the bandwagon. But I think, as the maturity comes in, we will see these sort of start to separate out, and you will have companies or practitioners who are serving for the disease burden of society, prevention of disease earlier, the health span equation. You will have new techniques, and we can maybe talk about stem cell therapy, exosome therapy, peptide therapy, hormone replacement therapy, parabiosis, which is where you take young blood and you give it to an older person. So, novel therapeutic agents like rapamycin, etc. So there are drugs, interventions for lifespan, and then you'll have all the fringe stuff, which is just making you look good and feel good through that process. So in my brain, that's how I sort of lay the landscape out.
I think our biggest problem will be that everyone claims to be an expert, and information available on ChatGPT allows businesses to mushroom very quickly. And what I keep telling the world out there is, don't look at fancy doors that you walk through. Ask who are the people in that organization, who are the practitioners in that organization. Are they qualified or are they certified? Anyone can get a certification from any B school or online school or whatever school, but a qualification is something that you've studied at, And also I tell people people loosely use this term nowadays, evidence-based medicine. I think the number one core thing when I practice as a nutritionist, as a health coach is, I know that when you have a perfect body weight, you will anyway live longer. I know that if I give you the right food, you will live longer. And I know if I give you the right nutritional supplements, which we can find out which are the better ones and track you, you can have better health. So health span is something that I echo with you very, very well. But, I'm a nutritionist, you're a doctor. And doctors, both my in-laws are doctors. Doctors are known not to be on the side of food. And you mentioned that in today's podcast. Stop giving the advice that you can eat anything and regulate your insulin dosage. So I get this feeling that food is big on your plate in practice. So what is the role of food in longevity based on your years of practicing on yourself and with your clients?
I just use the pun, food is small on my plate as well from time to time, right? Restricted eating has a role to play. In med school, 5 years, I had 1, maybe 2 lectures on nutrition. That was it. Everything else has really happened self-taught years later. We've forgotten the basis of medicine, which is let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food. And we've veered so far away from that in today's society. I think it's changing. There are an increasing number of modern day aware doctors who appreciate just how important what is put in is so important. I think the problem with this is that as a science, it is very nuanced and not enough structured science is being done in the field of nutrition, which we can then start to prescribe protocols out of. The simple, I won't say simple, but the common word of intermittent fasting, where is there data done in randomized control, systematically reviewed studies with matched cohorts of individuals with an intervention arm and a non-intervention arm, looking at specific outcomes of biomarker tracks and changes to show the benefits. And then, is it for 12 hours? Is it for 16 hours? Is it 24 hours? Is it macronutrient fixed? Is there hydration? Is there caffeination? Are there supplementation? So there's so many of these nuances that it's very easy for the average individual, myself included, to get very lost when you spend time on social media, because it's the followers which are dictating the loudest voice and therefore driving patterns of recognition in individuals. So I think if we can invest more, and when I say we, I mean folks like the ICMR, like the FDA, like the NIH, like the National Institute of Clinical Excellence in the UK. If these global authorities can invest more in nutritional science so that we can be better equipped at dosing food, beyond calories, but to the nuances of macros and time-restricted eating, etc.
You've studied how the human body works in space, Everest, and if you were to create something like the ultimate Everest diet, a nutrition plan that could prepare everyone for peak performance,
Yeah.
what would it look like, and do you think a corporate person could benefit from such a diet?
So it's a very interesting question, and something I ask myself because I keep thinking about the fueling choices that I make so that I can improve myself, not just to climb silly mountains or do silly things, but just lead a healthier life and be more energetic. I think some of the components that I gravitate towards now are a lot of focus on the macronutrient inputs through the day. So I'm quite a fan personally of restricting the amount of simple sugars and carbs to as low as possible. I try to get 15% perhaps, and then ensuring that I have a lot of good fats and good proteins to make up the other macros in my diet. So that's number one. The second thing that I use to my advantage is periods of calorific abstinence. People may call it time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, but ultimately it's calorific abstinence.
And how long do you go?
So it varies through the year actually. So a typical routine would look like where once a week I would do a 24-hour water fast, so dinner to dinner typically.
You get headaches?
No, I don't. I think it's because the body, because I've been doing this now for 5, 6 years, 7 years, the body has gotten used to the period of time, because you're rightly describing sort of the withdrawal of calories leading to this hangriness and migraine and headaches that people get. So staying hydrated, easing into it over a period of time, it's just your body getting used to something. That's all. So again, a few days in a week, I may preferentially choose to bring dinner earlier, so I'm opening up the fasting window and maybe pushing breakfast out slightly later. That's advantageous. And then once or twice a year, I'll do a much more structured 72-hour water fast. And that's allowing my mitophagy and autophagy to really go into hyperdrive. There is some data suggestive from animal studies to show immune regeneration, stem cell regeneration, etc. And there's also the mental component, which for me is a very big part of all of this as well.
How do you do a 72-hour fast? I mean, do you shut clinic and you go away?
No, I am equally active. I train every day. I see the same amount of people, patients, corporate talks. I'll travel. I do all of that. I don't take a break.
You're just on water?
I'm just on water.
Water and electrolytes?
I don't take electrolytes either. I'm just on water. I've gotten used to now having no electrolytes.
72 hours is 24, 48?
3 days.
3 days.
Dinner to dinner 3 days later.
So it's like you stop eating dinner, let's say on a Friday night.
Yep.
So it's Saturday, Sunday.
I won't do it at the weekend. That's the hardest socially to do it.
Okay, fine.
I would typically, Raina and I would typically start it on a Tuesday dinner.
So your wife does it along?
We do it together.
So I think couple chemistry also helps, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can't have your wife eating on the other side and you're trying to do
So
a fast.
last time I did it, actually, Raina was unwell. So she started and then she had to break it. And then for the last 48 hours, I was on my own, and it was significantly harder. It's hard enough with young kids anyway, because encouraging them to eat at dinner time, etc., you're just surrounded by food. And so much of life today, socializing, is food enabled. And then having the spouse not doing it as well, it was a little harder this year, but I just took it on as a mental challenge. And I did.
Do you prescribe 24-hour fast and 72 fast under your medical supervision to patients?
Yes. Simple answer, yes.
And what are the things that you as a doctor track before you ease people into a fasting maybe once a week of 24 hours and 72 hours maybe once or twice in a year?
So we have a very standard protocol for diagnostics, which everyone goes through. There's a very comprehensive blood set, about 150 odd markers. There's a whole bunch of digital and functional data that we collect, including body composition, DEXA, ultrasound abdomen, coronary calcium, carotid intima scores. So there's a whole bunch of tests that people go through. And then periodically, typically every 3 to 6 months, we would be repeating blood tests. And then we're getting the digital data on a much more frequent basis, daily or weekly, like the smart scales, etc. So we're guided by data, very important. Number two is that there's like a plane coming into land, you want to ease the person into it. So we would first start with changing the macronutrients, then adjusting calorific demand, so their body slowly habituating to a slightly lesser calorie. Then my preference is always to bring dinner up and then push breakfast out. You push breakfast out, a lot of people just jump into IF by skipping breakfast and going straight to lunch, and I'm sure you see this as well. There's a high cortisol load that's then put onto the system and therefore leading to inflammation, etc. So bring breakfast up as early as bring dinner up as possible, then push breakfast out, and that can in many instances actually give you a very nice 14 to 16 hour window if you're smart about it. And then once they've been doing this for a while, couple of days a week for a couple of months, then if they're open to it, then they'll ask and we can have a conversation about going to a 24 cycle and then beyond. Yeah.
I think fasting requires resilience.
Yeah, it does.
And, in your book, you write about the cold adaptation.
Yeah.
So one is like, I did the cold plunge yesterday and it was tough. It was tough. I felt as somebody took pins and needles and
daggers
was poking it in every part of my toes and my fingers.
It felt great, right?
It felt super great.
Yeah.
In fact, I got addicted.
Right.
I'm planning to do it back again today.
Yeah.
So much so that I reached out to the manufacturer of that tub because I took a picture and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I got to have this. I've got to have this at home.
Yeah.
But is there any negative things? You said fasting, do it under medical supervision. Is there anything negative in cold adaptation or the hyperbaric chambers that people should be cautious about?
No, very much so. I think we should always be cognizant of the fact that whilst the body has been designed or evolved to grow under stress, if you put a over-exaggerated amount of stress on it before it's used to it, you can break it down, right? Number one. Number two is that they're all nuanced. So the simple thing like cold exposure. We can think of cold exposure in many ways, but let's just think about it of a person going into a cold plunge pool. Best done start of day, not end of day. Okay? End of day is when the body actually prefers heat and red light as opposed to blue light and cold, just to keep it simple. Because you want to start the cellular physiological processes towards rest and recovery. So if you're going to be exposed to the cold, do it beginning of day rather than end of day. Simple rule of thumb. Second rule of thumb is on a heavy, intense workout day, especially if you're doing resistance training, do not go into the cold water. The cold water will cause vasoconstriction, will prevent the blood flow getting into the musculature and therefore lead to the enhanced recovery that you require. If you are so in love with it that you really want to do it, ensure that you have at least 4 to 6 hours after the acute insult before getting into a cold pool thereafter. So I typically use cold on my recovery days when I've had a gentle workout as opposed to a heavy workout, because I want to aid the recovery process as opposed to doing more detriment. That's the second rule of thumb there.
Anything else with the cold plunge?
Yeah, I think the third and most important piece is the dopamine. The dopamine surge that you get to improve mental and emotional health and resiliency cannot be understated, right? And I often use this as a learning opportunity. So 2 years ago today, my wife and I, we were in the Arctic Circle. We do this big expedition every year. 2 years ago today, we were in the Arctic Circle with a bunch of folks from the United Kingdom, and they were raising money for charity. They were all of these sort of senior corporate executives. They were raising money for charity, and the theme was mental health and resiliency. And what was done was a big chunk of ice was cut. Everyone was put onto a rope and they were asked to jump in the Arctic Circle, wearing a very thin base layer, obviously not naked skin, very thin base layer, but you take that leap of faith into the ice, and the rope is there for safety to pull someone out. You tell your body, everyone says, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. You do it, right? The best experiences are on the other side of fear. You do it, and suddenly you realize, what else can I now do, right? Eliud Kipchoge said that I am possible after running the marathon under 2 hours. You can translate that to any sphere of life: entrepreneurship, parenting, corporate well-being, other types of resistances and stresses and strains. So I do the cold plunge more for my gratification and satisfaction that I've done something really hard. I feel great after it, and I can do other hard things as well.
Basically, you're telling your brain, I'm the boss. And you listen to me.
Yeah.
And if I can do this,
Yes.
I can achieve anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Because you're right. And for all of us listening in, you don't need to go to the Arctic Circle and cut a block of ice out. I think this mental grit part, leaving aside cold adaptation and temperatures, the cold shower in the morning, research has shown 6 hours later, brain-derived neurotropic factor is released. When athletes took a shower, 6 hours later, they got a peak in the BDNF factors. So I always advise people, the starting point to mental resilience, start with a cold shower.
Sure. Yeah.
So Doc, when I go to the gym, everyone will watch me walking reverse on the treadmill.
Good.
So my physio said that it does help a little bit.
Yeah.
And I find it challenges the brain also.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm doing that. When I got your file, and I already knew you, I follow you on LinkedIn, I knew that you were the longevity doctor. And that's why I follow you, because you speak science. I did not know that you have a Guinness record.
Right.
So enlighten us, what's the record about? And what was your thinking when you went about this?
I like to do quirky things.
Okay.
Fundamentally. And if the body is involved in that quirky thing, then I'm there in a heartbeat. This is, I think, how many years ago? About 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Aiden was barely a year old. Aiden, our son, was barely a year old. And somebody sent me a message on Facebook. I'm not sure how many of the audience remembers Facebook, but you know, the old days where we didn't have any of the other apps. Facebook, they sent a message saying, are you interested in a Guinness record? I was like, yes. Are you a runner? I was like, yes. Then, do you live in Bombay? Yes. Okay. Turn up at 4:30 a.m. In Powai, which is a suburb or an area of Bombay. So I convinced Raina to wake up, and we drove, we took Aiden. My father-in-law came as well to watch him. And what it was, Ryan, it was a Guinness record for the most number of people to race one another backwards. So the Guinness had a prescribed distance. I think it was 750 meters or whatever that is. Doesn't sound too much when you're running forwards, but backwards it does hurt. And the city of Munich had held the record previously. There were a couple of hundred people that did it. And so Bombay had amassed 1,100 of us. And we had 30 minutes to do 2 successful attempts. You had three times, 2 successful attempts over the distance. The first one, and what was interesting, they set up all these cameras. So no one is allowed to look behind. If you look behind, that counts as not backward running. So your gaze has to be forward and you're running backwards.
How do you know you won't hit into bump into somebody?
That's part of the fun. Yeah. So first attempt, it was a mess, and then we had all that time pressure. Anyway, we did it, fantastic. But what I'm most proud of, apart from the quirkiness of it, is I had Aiden with me, and he was in the pram. He was just about sort of walking and toddling around at that time. So on the attempt, on the first or second attempt, I actually ran backwards while pulling the pram. So he has the record as well. Anyway, we've got the little certificate that they give you at the end. He's probably too young to be cognizant of what it is. I'm sure he'll be embarrassed with it at some point in life. But that was for me the most magic moment, that yes, okay, there's a Guinness record, but I got to share it with my son. I got to do it for something that I like doing, which is running. And, as a family, we've sort of had that little special moment together.
I can just see your son Aiden saying, my quirky dad.
I'm sure there'll be other words he uses along the way as well.
So what I do with my son is I record all these moments, and I keep saying to him, it's like, Papa, why are you recording me? It's like, when you're 21 or 20, when you have that girlfriend come over, I've got all the embarrassing videos, so you better watch it, young man.
Very good, very good. Yeah.
So, our kids are going to grow up.
Yeah.
I was talking to my son the other day, and he said, what if God is an alien?
Okay.
I thought that was like
great question.
Acceptable, right?
Yeah.
We don't see God, but we believe in God, for those of us who believe in God and all. And then we got chatting and all, and I was like, would you like to become an astronaut?
Right.
Like, no, it's too much of work. Okay. It's like, would you like to buy a house on Mars?
Yeah.
It's like, that I could do.
Okay.
So I got him thinking, right? Father and son doing this futuristic thinking, like, okay, how would we build a house on Mars and stuff like that. And I was like, we got to grow our own food, right? And hydroponics is the new thing. So like, you're thinking like, okay, if the human needs nutrition, then the hydroponics has to have the right nutrition, everything. Now, you have been on the Atlantis space shuttle mission as part of a medical team when you're in your young days.
Yes.
Right? So you're measuring physiology and all. Assuming that Elon Musk is able to get people to start moving to Mars.
Yes.
In fact, in your book, you write about cryotherapy or cryofreezing of the entire body, and tubules are going and people go into this cryostasis and all. So are we truly ready for this interplanetary living? Is the human race too fat and too lazy and too clickable button that halfway through Mars they'll say, turn the bus around, we need to get back to Earth, I'm not getting my pizza in 30 minutes?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So a few years ago I was appointed by NASA and the Canadian Space Agency to be one of the international judges for what's called the Deep Food Challenge, which is this idea that let's assume SpaceX is even anywhere close to what it wants to achieve. Elon has made this grandiose plan that by the year 2040, he wants human colonization of Mars, and that I think by the year 2050 or 60, we've got 1 million humans living on the surface. How do we feed them? The regolith, which is what the soil on Mars is called, is really devoid of any real minerals. There's not really that much carbon in it either. Very, very little amount of sort of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So and practically no oxygen except that which might potentially be locked up on the Martian South Pole. So how do we create an ecosystem to allow humans to live, because you need to feed them? So that work is already beginning now. There are studies that are happening. It's still very early research, but studies which are happening looking at what is the nutrition the body requires, how do we create the industrial scale mechanisms to grow that? Is it through protein printing? Is it through self-enclosed biospheres where everything is there, right from the soil to the plant to the microorganism to the water potential, similar to sort of the movies that we've seen, Martian, that famous movie, etc. So there's already that work which is happening. On the International Space Station today, there is an entire mini module dedicated to plant biology, where they're looking at how do plants grow, how do they then produce energy for feeding humans, etc. So I think that needs to be solved. That's a big problem, which is how do we feed humans living on other planets. I think, however, the bigger problem, and anyone who's been watching the news recently would be aware of the 2 astronauts that got stranded on the International Space Station, right? The Indian origin, Sunita being one of them. And the frailty by which the return, because it was covered in such a high amount of media interest of late, the frailty of seeing them arrive on Earth after that extended period of time. And that's something very common. We are devoid, when we live on the International Space Station, an astronaut is devoid of gravity. Gravity is a fundamental strain on the human body, which is critical for so many cellular adaptations, including muscle, bone, cardiovascular, vision, balance, sexual production, neurological state, mental health, emotional health, etc. Gravity, we forget, we've evolved under one gravitational load pulling us to the center of this planet. So the planet Mars is at about a 3rd gravity, Moon is at a 6th gravity. So you've got a 9-month journey, 6 to 9 months to get there. By the way, you can't turn around halfway. There's no way you can turn the ship around. You have to wait for the rocket to go past the gravitational slingshot to then come back. There's no sort of go back home now moment. So you've got 6 to 9 months outbound. You then have to wait for Earth and Mars to be at the right orbital frequencies to be closest to then leave Mars and come back to Earth. Otherwise, they are 1.5 years away, sometimes in their orbital journey around the Sun. So there's a 6-month journey on the Martian surface before you can even think about getting back off. And then you've got a 9 months. So we're roughly talking about a 2.5 year round trip. One way potentially for the early ones that go out there, right? A success is going to be really hard in these types of missions. They're going to be very brave people that go. And no gravity, disconnection from Earth. You know, the International Space Station has a small time delay. The moon has a few minutes time delay. Mars has a much longer time delay. I think it's about 12 minutes or so. So you have it might be longer actually, but you have this inability to communicate in real time, which is a big problem. And then there's all the other stresses and strains that this alien environment will put onto the system. So a lot of work has to happen. We are being exposed to the rocketry, which is being celebrated. SpaceX primarily, of course, the Blue Shepard by Amazon and all of the, Virgin Galactic and all of these things. There is a mammoth difference between going to low Earth orbit versus sending a human to the moon versus even thinking about going to Mars and beyond. So it's going to take a lot of energy, investment, science to get us there. But it's exciting.
I think for the time being, we'll settle with Star Trek.
I love it. Yeah.
Me too. I'm a huge Trekkie fan.
Yeah.
Now, you've worked with high performers across sports, space, and business.
Yeah.
Now, in achieving peak performance, what's more important? The physical fuel we give our body or the mental framework we build around resilience and stress? So it's like a weighing scale, right? Food on one side or the mental framework.
There's this saying, you can't build a house on a poor foundation.
Yes.
So the foundation here would be the fuel and the physical body. We have to remember our sort of evolutionary lineage, which is, we have a reptilian brain first, which is the brainstem, etc. And then we have these cerebellar hemispheres responsible for everything that makes us human being, from decision making through art and creativity, the ability to empathize, care, and connect. So if we're not feeding the foundation properly first, it's going to be very difficult to do anything beyond that. So I think fundamentally we need to fix those building blocks and then give us the opportunities to factor in resiliency, etc. It might be a very simplistic way of looking at it, but again, my brain likes to do simple things.
A good answer. We build on a good foundation. So speaking of this foundation, a lot of people eat to stay alive, right? But elite performers eat to optimize their potential.
Right.
Where do you think the average person is going wrong with their nutrition? And is there a massive fundamental shift that we need to have in how we view food?
I think how we view food is the key. And view food and then access food. View food through the lens we've already spoken about, fuel rather than diet, or that's a really important story to tell people. Educate people about the right food choices and then make those food choices readily available. I don't like buying anything which comes in a plastic packet or a jar. You'd probably be very hard pressed to find that at home. But if you eat real food, then actually the body can consume so much of it and it can enjoy so much of it in different diversity. Plant, animal, you make the choice, cultural choice, religious choice, sustainability choice, etc. But raising that awareness, giving people the accessibility for that is really important. And I think the third thing might be that perhaps we overcomplicate it. Perhaps people get so focused on the micro nuances of this that they forget about the big picture, and they get caught up in, should I be doing this supplement or that bar, and should I have it at this time or that time? And in all of that, they forget that just, think about consciously, how much calories am I putting in? What are those calories in terms of fats, proteins, and carbs? And then some of those things under it. So again, maybe I just have too simplistic a view on these things, but I think it's the simple things which can become sustainable things, and they can lead to great outcomes if done every day over a long period of time.
I also believe in India, with our population of 1.4 billion.
Yeah.
My media manager said this, we don't have a lot of people don't have the luxury of consciousness.
Right.
And one part of consciousness is knowing really what to feed your body. Because otherwise we have this saying, roti kapda makan.
Right.
You're chasing your food, you're chasing the roof over your head, you're chasing the clothes on your back.
Yeah.
And if it's very easy for elite, well-to-do people to talk about food. But how much of it do you think that the government should be focusing on as a policy in terms of better nutrition and better food for people?
So I think the realization is there now, because we see the government sort of talk about the benefits of, let's say, millets as a healthier alternative for sort of carbohydrate consumption. I certainly make it a point wherever I travel to in India. I always, we again, Ryan and I, we just love going to the smallest of places and villages and talking to people who live there. And oftentimes it's their simpler life which is easier to live healthily and have longevity versus our complicated versions that we create for ourselves. They eat real food from the ground. You know, they have farms which they grow their own animal livestock, so they're completely in control of that whole food chain, etc. So I think we should be cognizant that just because we live in urban, modern centers doesn't necessarily mean, in fact, it's probably the converse, that life is healthier. It's the other way around oftentimes. And secondly, yes, I think the more the government can do around making, you know, good quality calories available for people, the better. And certainly if I were ever health minister, I would really push for a sugar tax and try and minimize sugar addition in as many places as possible, because it's a hidden problem. It's there ubiquitously. And secondly, unfortunately, our genes make us more at risk of these lifestyle diseases because we tend to store calories rather than expend calories.
Speaking of expending calories, something where we will ramp up our metabolism. I'm going to ask you a rapid fire now.
Ooh, okay. All right.
So, quick questions. Think of you doing a Tabata type of training.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If your life had a nutrition of fitness motto, what would it be?
It does. It's Gugogam. My wife and I have it.
Gugogam.
Yes. It stands for get up, get out, get moving. We do it every day.
Could you repeat that again?
It's G-U,
G-U,
G-O,
G-O,
G-M. Gugogam.
Gugogam.
That's our mantra. That's how we live our lives.
So get up,
get out, get moving.
Get moving. After doing the marathon and Everest,
yeah.
Anything else on the cards?
Oh, so many things. Life is full of adventures. This year, hopefully, I'll be able to do the big desert ultra marathon. Last year, unfortunately, I contracted chikungunya, so I couldn't. Next year, we have another hopeful plan to go back to the Arctic Circle as a second one. And there may be an underwater expedition coming up as well. Ryan and I were flirting with the idea. Yeah.
Any 2 books, Dr. Marcus, that you think have changed your life or you feel people out there should be reading to change their life?
I like Peter's book Outlive because of the way he simplistically narrates what healthspan is, and he gives a whole bunch of examples for people for themselves. So Peter Attier's book Outlive is a fantastic book. The second one that I reread every 5 to 6 years is Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. Nothing to do with biology, everything to do with resiliency. He describes his experiences in Nazi Germany as an Austrian Jew. He survived, I think, 18 or 20 months in the concentration camps and documented what he learned, that purpose can be created even in the harshest of human suffering, right? And for me, I remind myself that, and it comes back to the resiliency topic, therefore, that even in the hardest of times, and we may consider what we're doing as suffering, it's nothing compared to what others have done. And even in those moments, life has an opportunity to create purpose and meaning for you. So imbibe those values day to day. That would be a second book.
You have 30 seconds to convince somebody to ditch junk food. What would you say to them?
Think of your body as a machine. If you have a car at home, it probably requires a fuel, either diesel or petrol. You wouldn't dream of going to the pump and putting the other wrong fuel in it. Your body is a machine. You need to fill it up with the right type of fuel for the machine to optimally do the things it was meant to do.
If you could create an Olympic sport just for you, what would it be?
Oh, just for me, an Olympic sport. I really don't know. Biomarker obsession.
Good one.
Yeah.
Really good one. I would add cleaning to that.
Okay.
I would make cleaning
Cleaning
an
an Olympic sport.
Olympic sport, because you'd get NEAT, right? Non-exercise adaptive thermogenesis in it.
Very good.
One thing that you do every day that keeps you at peak performance.
I move every day. I make it a point, no matter where I am in the world, my running shoes are always with me. So I either get a run in or I sort of hit the gym. But
when you hit a Bangalore airport or a Bombay airport, before waiting for your flight, are you sitting down or are you walking?
I'm walking around. I'm one of those crazy people who's dragging their bag, counting the steps, going up and down, talking to people. Sometimes embarrassingly so. Last week when I was flying out of Bangalore, I really craved a chocolate. And, I'm human too. I like to have sweets.
Did somebody recognize you?
Somebody recognized me as I was buying. And he said, "Hey, are you Doc M?" I was like, this is the worst time to ask for a selfie.
So I'll give you a secret on that.
Yeah.
I normally wear a mask and I do that.
Oh, really?
So I've been caught in UB City drinking a narrated beverage.
Right.
And the person's like, I need to put this on Instagram that you're
Right.
drinking. I'm like, it's my cheat meal, it's my reward meal.
Right, right.
And we are as human as anybody else out there.
Exactly, yeah.
Some of the mistakes, maybe 3 of the mistakes you see with your clients or people that you've consulted with when they're trying to build resilience.
They give up too early. They try to do too many things at exactly the same time. And they aren't focused on the foundation, going back to our earlier point.
One biohack that actually works.
Oh, many actually work.
Give me them in a rapid fire.
So, temperature control of the room.
Okay.
Very, very powerful. Sauna.
Okay.
Very, very powerful.
Dry sauna, wet sauna?
Dry sauna.
Okay.
Very important. Very, very powerful.
How long in the sauna?
20 minutes, 3 times a week.
Okay.
Yep. Low carb, high fat, high protein.
Okay.
Very good. Magnesium.
Okay.
For me, I've seen it work, and for many other people as well. Improve sleep scores as well. Very powerful. The Norwegian protocol to improve VO2 max, which is elevate heart rate, collapse it down, elevate heart rate, collapse it down. Takes 28-30 minutes. Very, very powerful. Zone 2, MAF running. Running long durations with a very low heart rate elevates the floor. There's so many I could just list and list and list. Yeah.
Any foods that you think that biohack your life?
Yes. This sounds silly, but I love eggs. Great source of protein, complete amino acid. Eggs are wonderful. I do like fatty fish. I'm a big fan of good quality fish. And I occasionally, and maybe I'll get trolled for this, I do eat red meat once, maybe twice a week. Good quality red meat, not processed red meat, good quality red meat for protein, very important. I limit myself to 1 fruit a day, seasonal preferably, and I like the citrus fruits and the berries for sugar control.
Why 1 fruit a day?
It's
fructose?
It's high fructose. It's high fructose, and I think too many people make the mistake of having a big bowl of many fruits in there without the skins and all the natural fiber that's meant to be there. So it's just my brain's way of limiting that, making sure I'm getting the benefits of it. And I'm gluten free. I'm pretty much dairy free. And I really limit exogenous artificial sugars.
If I caught you at the airport, would you be looking at the nutritional label of a snack that you're buying?
I wouldn't really be buying the snack, honestly. Even at the airport, I'm looking for real food. I rarely, junk on processed foods. But I will always be looking at the nutritional label. I took both Aiden and Eva to a supermarket about 3 months ago. And I said, you can buy any chocolate in here where the first ingredient is cacao. The poor guys, they searched like hundreds of bars and they couldn't find one. But I'm trying to teach them at this young age how important it is to turn the packet over and just look at what the ingredients are.
I think teaching our children is very, very important.
Yeah.
Jumping into the gym workout.
Yeah.
A gym where you work out, there's no AC or there's AC?
There is air conditioning. It's pretty humid in Bombay, so
Okay.
yeah, and I'm not in control of that, but I'm okay with that. That's
But if
fine.
you had your own gym, what is the temperature you would keep it at?
I mean, I preferably, actually, even when I rarely run in the gym. I prefer to run outdoors. I use the gym primarily for muscle training. So there it's okay because the temperature is sort of maintained at sort of 23, 24 degrees. But if I'm running on the treadmill, then I'll always have a fan with me because I find it very, very stuffy otherwise.
Should women work out during the menstruation cycle?
Very important. So we could talk for hours on this, but to keep it really short, women typically have the follicular phase, which comes first, then they ovulate, the egg is released, and then they have the luteal phase. The exercising can differ based on which phase you're in. So in the first phases of the cycle, you can do more strength-based workouts and really push the body with HIIT. And in the luteal phases, towards the end of the cycle, you can do more of the low-intensity aerobic types of activities. It's pretty nuanced beyond that, though, but it's important for women sort of to think about the differences.
Dr. Marcus, you write in your book that the DNA in mitochondria
Yes.
come in from
Your
the
mother.
egg.
Yes.
So, am I to understand that the power of future athletes was probably inherited partly from their mother?
Yes, and all the way back to Eve. Empty DNA, mitochondrial DNA, codes for 13 or 14 genes. It's only ever transmitted from the mother.
That means if we want to have a nation of elite athletes,
Yes,
our mothers, our daughters, our sisters
Yes.
need to really work out.
absolutely. Get fit, get healthy.
Get fit, Mother India.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing. I've had a great time with you today, Dr. Marcus. I think I have to invite you back again because there's so much that we can talk about geriatric health, women's nutrition. If I want to reach out to you, where do I find you?
No, thank you. So I'm pretty active on social media. So LinkedIn and Instagram primarily, and they can find me at my handle, which is at Doc M Ranney, my surname Ranney. I try to put out a weekly newsletter every week on LinkedIn where I sort of unpick some of the latest and greatest in longevity science, so people can subscribe to that freely as well.
It's a pleasure having you here on my podcast. Let's grow old together.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
You know, after speaking with Dr. Marcus, one thing hit me hard. We keep searching for ways to live longer, but we rarely ask, how do I live better today? What I truly learned is that longevity isn't about age, it's about energy. It's about how deeply you live, not how long you do. And maybe, just maybe, the real science of living isn't in a lab, it's in how you show up for your health and fitness, for your work, your people, and yourself. So tell me in the comments, what part of this conversation stayed with you? And if this episode made you think even a little differently about your life, then like, share, and subscribe, because we gotta share this knowledge. Let's make this message reach as many people as it can, because everyone deserves to know how powerful they already are.